fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to connect.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Little Sunday morning edition, the Air Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Air Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. Go ahead and buckle in. This is going to be one of them ones as far as we're going to be on air for a little while here. Now, as Paul and Luke have mentioned in the chat, I think this might be the first time in a while that nobody gets fired. I hope, but we still have a jam-packed show. We're going to open college football. A lot of teams surviving. Indiana, that thriller. I thought it was Fernando Mendoza's Heisman moment. We'll discuss that. Oregon surviving at Iowa. Alabama, they win, but it isn't necessarily pretty against LSU. We will also talk about, by the way, about Texas A&M, who's awesome. Speaking of awesome, Texas Tech wins a top 10 matchup. They deserve our respect. We'll discuss them. And speaking of respect, I got to give it up to Mark Stoops. Has he done enough to keep his job? Kentucky has now won back-to-back SEC games after the thumping of the Florida Gators. We'll discuss them. And then from there, we will get to a little bit of college basketball because it's that time of year. The sports are overlapping. We'll talk about Arkansas falling apart late against Michigan State. Is there any reason to worry there? And I got to give credit where it's due, man. North Carolina gets the win against Kansas. Caleb Wilson, that just might be the best freshman in America, which is saying something. We'll talk a little bit about that St. John's, Alabama thriller as well. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. One, make sure you're subscribed to Air Torres Pod YouTube channel. Last week, we surpassed 65,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. We really do appreciate your support. Also, if you do listen on podcast, you can find us on Apple and Spotify. Find us there. Leave a 5-star rating. Leave a review. Really would appreciate your support. Speaking of which, I did drop the Fox Sports Radio show in the YouTube chat. Do me a favor. Let those Fox Sports Radio bosses know that Torres, people like Torres, and you got to, support the show. Download that podcast. We really would appreciate your support of the show there. Speaking of support, whose support we appreciate? We appreciate our friends. We appreciate our partners. We appreciate America's #1 ticketing app, SeatGeek. And again, the SeatGeek app. It has been downloaded by over 28 million people worldwide. This is America's #1 ticketing app for a reason. Listen, what I love about SeatGeek, I keep telling you, but the bottom line is they take care of you. They take care of listeners of the Air Torres Pod. What do I mean by that? Well, it's pretty simple. First of all, they take care of you because every ticket on the entire app is vetted, okay? Every ticket rated 1 through 10, green dot or red dot. Red dot means you maybe want to stay away from that one. Green dot means go ahead and purchase that bad boy. But you know what I really love about SeatGeek? As I said, they take care of listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod. If you are a listener of this show, you can download the SeatGeek app. And if you use promo code Torres, that's promo code TORRES, you get $20 off your first purchase. That is right. SeatGeek.com, SeatGeek app, promo code Torres at checkout gets you $20 off your first purchase. It applies, by the way, not just to college football, but college basketball. We had a listener get some concert tickets. The Backstreet Boys. Use promo code Torres. It gets you $20 off anything on SeatGeek. SeatGeek.com, SeatGeek app, promo code Torres. We really do appreciate your support. With that said, it's a Sunday in November. So we got a lot to talk about. No more time to waste. Let's go ahead and get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, I'll say this. To me, this felt like the weekend before the weekend. Okay, listen, Thanksgiving's coming. I cannot believe how quickly we are getting to Thanksgiving. What's better than the turkey and the mashed potatoes? Sometimes it's the appetizers in the lead up to the main meal, okay? And so I bring it up because this felt like the lead up into next week. Next week we get Bama, Oklahoma. We get Texas, Georgia, among other games. But this week was all about survival. And this is a week, I think we even mentioned it on Thursday's show. that I felt like some weird stuff was going to happen. Georgia on the road at Mississippi State, Oregon on the road at Iowa. Well, there were no major upsets, but certainly some of the best teams in college football survived. Let's go ahead and talk about them. The first one, listen, we got to start in Bloomington. Well, not Bloomington, excuse me. We got to start with the team in Bloomington, Indiana, the Indiana Hoosiers. And it's funny, I did my week, I guess it would have been 11 preview last week. And the one game I just felt like, I'm going to stay away from is Indiana-Penn State. I mean, I know Indiana's been steamrolling everybody, but Penn State still has NFL dudes everywhere. I kind of felt like this was almost like their Super Bowl. Like there is no playoff for them. There is no Big Ten championship game for them. They just lost to Ohio State, but you have a 9-0 Indiana team coming to town. And this just felt like if they were going to get up for any game left on the schedule, this would probably be it. Well, I bring it up because that was certainly the case, to credit to Penn State, right? First home game. This was kind of crazy. First home game since James Franklin gets fired. The crowd, to its credit, showed up to support that team, and the team gave them something to cheer for. They had Indiana on the ropes essentially the entire game. I think the thing that stood out, that defense that we knew was going to be elite all season long, they stepped up. They had Fernando Mendoza running for his life, Fernando Mendoza on his back a few times. And it is worth noting, Indiana was pretty banged up coming into this game. Elijah Surratt, I believe, is probably their best receiver. He was out. Aiden Fisher, their best linebacker, who's also kind of the guy who calls the defense, he's out. And so I just felt like something weird could happen. Well, something weird did happen because with, about under 2 minutes to go, Penn State had the lead in this game. We are talking about the 3-5 Penn State Nittany Lions. They have not won a game. How about this? Penn State had not won a game and has not won a game since week 3 against Villanova. They got the bye, lost to Oregon, and the rest is history. Well, I just bring it up. They had the lead. Indiana gets the ball. First play, Fernando Mendoza again gets the crap kicked out of him. Second play, he completes a deep play for a first down. And eventually, they do get deep into Penn State territory, into the red zone, trailing 24-20. We got to go ahead and listen to Gus Johnson's call. Now, before we set it up, it is audio only for our YouTube overlords. We are not playing video. For people who don't understand how that works, we cannot play video from a game broadcast without approval or without spending tens of thousands of dollars, which we don't have as a startup. So here is Gus Johnson's audio call only of the final play. Indiana trailing 24-20 with under 30 seconds to go.
In trouble! It's out! Touchdown! Wow! A rock play! Unbelievable! Give him that!
Gus Johnson. Listen, first of all, let me say this. I know there are some people that are like, I don't like. Come on, man. Come on, man. That is college football right there as Indiana gets the thrilling win. That was the Omar Cooper two-toe touch. I mean, listen, I would guess anybody watching this has seen the highlights, has seen the play. One of the great catches that you will ever see. Unbelievable catch, unbelievable play, unbelievable finish. And I think what was maybe even more unbelievable about it was Curt Cignetti's response after. It's so funny. I was just watching the game. My wife was in the room. And, they showed Cignetti on the sideline, and he had that Cignetti scowl where he just, didn't look very happy, whatever. And he goes to speak with Jenny Taft. And I assumed it was going to be this wasn't good enough. We stink. We have a lot of stuff to work on. And instead, Curt Cignetti, the exact opposite. Listen to Curt Cignetti get emotional about the comeback win for the Indiana Hoosiers.
Such an incredible finish, but the composure from your quarterback to find Omar Cooper there for that game-winning touchdown. Take me through it.
Refused to lose, basically. Sacked on the one. Haven't done anything. Last 5-6 passes, get no protection, right? Running ball through us, play action pass. No timeouts left. Make a play on second and who knows what, 30 for a first down. Great play in the end zone. Didn't draw it up in the dirt, but I mean, we saw what they were doing, and it's a great throw and catch. And you know what? This was an unbelievable win. I've seen a lot of stuff in my days, I've never seen anything quite like this.
Obviously, your schedule from here on out. I know you've got some big goals, but how crucial was this win given where you guys want to go?
Well, every game's important, you know. I mean, we played a little shorthanded, but that's part of the deal for every team in America. And we got to play better in a lot of different areas, and we're lucky to win. But I am so proud of these kids.
Well, congratulate them. Thank you.
You know how I know that moment was awesome? So I shared that video on my social media page at Aaron_Torres on Twitter. Jenny Taft herself, who I used to work with at Fox, I love Jenny. I adore Jenny. She is as nice and as sweet and as genuine as she seems on TV. She commented with the little heart emoji. So she felt the emotion from Curt Cignetti. Unbelievable stuff as Indiana holds on for the win. Listen, I don't have a ton else about this. Now, I will say, first of all, Matt, thank you for reminding me. If you are an Indiana fan just following us, make sure to find us, Torres on Indiana. Torres on Indiana, our late-breaking news, our Twitter page with all your late-breaking Indiana news. But I bring it up because, to me, what stands out about this game to me is Fernando Mendoza, okay? And so, listen, I have enjoyed the Fernando Mendoza story. I actually, you know who? I'm on one right now. I want to give credit. Benjamin Hodge helps run our Torres on the Vols page. He is an NFL draftnik guru, crazy guy, okay? And he was telling me in like May, he's like, dude, the kid who transferred to Indiana, Fernando Mendoza, who I obviously remembered having beaten Auburn a year ago when he was at Cal. Sorry, producer Matt, always comes back to Auburn. But I remembered him from last year at Cal, but I did not expect this. But what I'll also say is all season long, I was kind of sitting there saying, like, is this really the guy? Like, is he really the number one quarterback in college football? Is he really the Heisman Trophy favorite? And I think early in the season, you know, as Alabama won those 4 straight games against ranked opponents, I kind of said Ty Simpson should probably be the Heisman favorite. Then I thought for a week or two it should be Diego Pavia. Diego Pavia was incredible against Auburn on Saturday. But to me, this was Fernando Mendoza's moment, okay? Because, like I said, he was getting the crap kicked out of him all game long. And it would have been so easy for him to just, I don't know, like I don't want to say quit or fold or whatever, but it would have been easy for him to just kind of pout, walk back to the sidelines, kind of give up, for lack of a better term. And I think for the entire Indiana program, like I said, best wide receiver not playing in this game. You know, a loss really doesn't change anything. I mean, you can still go to the Big Ten championship game, still go to the college football playoff, but the will to win, led by their quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, I think that to me was what stood out. And I thought Fernando Mendoza, to me, showed me a ton. I know we're very sound heavy in this opening segment, but you got to listen to Fernando Mendoza. Okay, so again, for people who just are not familiar with him, went to Cal. I believe he's already graduated in an MBA school. Listen to this guy talk. He's asked a question about getting beat up in the pocket, how he was resilient. When you hear this audio, you are going to be ready to run through a freaking wall. Play the sound map.
Physically, I feel good. I would say I'm a larger quarterback, but to see what the defense, special teams, and offense, especially the offensive line, what they're going through, battling every play, I can't stay on the ground. No matter how hard the hit is, no matter how much it hurts, when seeing those guys, when seeing Charlie Becker's over there, my roommate, or seeing Omar Cooper Jr. take a hit on the seam, or seeing, you know, Pat Coogan, Khalil Benson battling their butts off, I know that I'm going to put my life on the line for that team, and I'm going to die on that field. I will never sub myself out in that instance, and I would die on that field for my brothers.
I would die on the field for my brothers. Are you ready to run through a damn wall here at 11:17 a.m. Eastern time on a Sunday for Fernando Mendoza? Because I am. And I'll say this, like I said, there's 2 games left in the season for Indiana, plus a Big Ten championship game. And we'll see what happens with the Heisman. We'll see what happens with the NFL draft. But this kid, to me, was the story. So impressive. Don't want to undersell what Omar Cooper Jr. did with that incredible touchdown grab. But like I will say this, you know, my Fox Sports Radio Saturday show, our producer is a Jets fan. And I think our producer was maybe a little bit worried about, we got all these first-round picks, but if Mendoza's QB1, should I be concerned? Listen, none of us know, but I'll say this. You listen to him, it is hard not to be ready to run through a damn wall for Fernando Mendoza and run through a wall for the Indiana Hoosiers. Unbelievable game, unbelievable win for Indiana. let's keep it going. Let's just rip through some of these other teams, these other close games. One game that we did take the under in the Iowa-Oregon game. And it was funny, like this was one that I really thought we could be on upset alert. It really felt like one of those scenarios where I just said, weird west to east travel. The weather was not good. I was thinking about this with Iowa. Is like, listen, I've never been in a cage with a Wolverine or a rabid dog or whatever. But it's like, isn't that what playing Iowa football is like? Like, we can make fun of Iowa, punt to win, all that stuff. But it's like, when it's go time, when it is time to buckle up the chin straps, they are just a beast to play, especially at home. They run the crap out of the ball. They play great defense. They don't beat themselves. They make you play their style of game. And so I really thought this was a spot where Oregon could get upset. I thought it could shake up the Big Ten playoff picture. And we were this close to it happening. Mark Gronowski, the go-ahead score with about 3 minutes to go in this game, right before the 2-minute timeout. And I thought Oregon was losing. Oregon basically was 1-3 and out, 1-4 and out, I guess it would be, really, from ending up losing this game. Well, we get under the 2-minute timeout. They get the ball back. Just credit where it's due. I mean, Dante Moore, who, he's been okay in these last couple games. I don't know that he's been great. The last time that Oregon played on the road, he had 184 yards passing. On Saturday, he had 112 yards passing. Well, guess what? He made those 112 yards passing count, okay? Because in this game, some unbelievable throws. The throw to Malik Benson that set up the first down, that set up the field goal, was as impressive as anything that I can remember in recent memory. They get in field goal range. They kick the field goal as time expired. No sound here. We're not going to spend too much time reacting to this. To me, like, this is the Dan Lanning ethos, right? And I was thinking about this. It's like, I think Lanning gets a little bit of criticism. He hasn't won a ton of really big games. Got smoked in the college football playoff last year. I think he's putting together a pretty impressive resume of winning a lot of these really close games in really tough conditions. Go back to last year. They beat Ohio State at home. Go back to earlier this year. Listen, we can go back with revisionist history now and talk about what Penn State is. But in the moment, that was a game where they were up big. Penn State came back, and Oregon somehow found a way in double overtime. Now you go to Iowa, got to win on the road. And it's so funny. Like, I go back to my preseason, conversations and thoughts that we had at the time. And I remember saying, like, Oregon, it's going to get tougher for them in year 2 in the Big Ten. You got to go to Penn State, to Iowa, plus USC might be improved. We'll see Indiana, et cetera, et cetera. I just bring it up because Oregon is passing all of the tests with flying colors. I'm not going to blame them if they can't beat Indiana, because nobody can, whatever. So credit to Oregon. And now, the college football playoff picture is shaping up pretty clearly in the Big Ten. Ohio State, there's no way they're not going to be in at this point. Indiana only has 2 games left. And Oregon, by the way, I think basically unofficially clinched a spot here. Weird Friday night game coming up against Minnesota. Then they have USC at home. USC currently a 2-loss team, so USC is kind of on the fringes of that conversation. Oregon could basically knock them out of the playoff picture with a win in Eugene. We'll see what happens there. That game is 2 Saturdays from now, so November 22nd. And then, oh, by the way, the big one, Washington on the road. Washington, by the way, losing to Wisconsin on Saturday. So all of a sudden, Washington was quietly sitting at 6-2. They are no longer in the playoff picture, but they can play spoiler in that game. All right, finally, let's get to a couple more in the SEC. This one was not close, but I would be remiss if I did not talk a little Texas A&M. Texas A&M goes to Missouri. My buddy Billy Lucci, Texags Radio, I thought he did an awesome job of framing this, right? It's like every time something happens with A&M, it's like people want to diminish it, right? They go to LSU. Well, LSU stinks and Brian Kelly got fired. Okay, cool. Then they're coming off of a bye. Missouri's playing pretty well. They're back on the road. It's the third straight road game for A&M. Are they on upset alert? No, they're not. 38-17 is the final score. And then, of course, after the game, everybody wants to say, well, Missouri's down to a true freshman quarterback. And no. This was a great win. This was a dominant win. And man, oh man, this is just who Texas A&M is, okay? And this continues to amaze me. I mean, it continues to genuinely amaze me who Texas A&M has become, okay? This was the program my entire life. Been watching college football 30 years. Every time something's going good, every time something's going right, something weird happens. You can even go back to last year in the Mike Elko era. You can go back to remember that team started 7-1 overall, finished 1-4 when you factor in a bowl game. I mean, they were going into the back half of the year in the playoff conversation. Remember, they went into the final weekend against Texas. The winner of that game went to the SEC championship game, So you go back to last year, even last year under Mike Elko in year one, it just was like, oh my God, here we go with A&M again. And so for them to show up on a day-to-day basis, every single game, ready to freaking go, like we just got to give credit where it's due, man. Listen, I don't know where they rank. Are they the best team in the SEC? Are they number 2 behind Ohio State? Are they number 3 behind Ohio State? I don't know. All I know is that I would say team by team, game by game, you just get the most consistent effort from them of anybody in college football. They're always the same. They run the crap out of the ball. They play great defense. They get after the quarterback. And they're another one. We start talking about unofficial playoff tickets being punched. I think Texas A&M did it on Saturday night. Final 3, South Carolina at home, then Samford, then Texas. I think the Texas game, Texas, of course, has Georgia this weekend. But the Texas game is certainly shaping up to be very interesting in terms of if Texas loses, could they still be in the playoff picture at 9-3 if they beat A&M? Well, I'll tell you what, A&M will have a chance to quiet the Longhorns in Texas, but man, oh man, it's just, listen, there's not much to take away from this game other than that A&M is just the same team every freaking day. Let's go ahead and give them some credit. Finally, in the ACC, let's go ahead or SEC. The ACC stinks. I see the chat talking about how bad the ACC is now. You don't need me to tell you. So let's instead say in the SEC, Alabama takes care of business against LSU. Final score in this one, 20-9. Weird game. And I even go back to this week. It felt like in the lead up to this game, quietest I can ever remember the Alabama LSU stuff. And part of it is LSU not only fired Brian Kelly, but just the chaos around the program, the governor saying this, they name a new school president, they name the AD, then they kind of say he's not the permanent AD and nobody's really sure what's going on. Game happens, and just a weird game where it never really felt like Alabama wasn't going to win the game, but it never really felt like they pulled away in this one either, and they dominated in the manner that they did. First of all, before we even get back to Alabama, I thought it was interesting. Garrett Nussmeier finally got pulled. Now, listen, I've been very anti-Garrett Nussmeier. I said back in all, now's not the time, Matt. We got to find the clip. I think it was in like April. Todd McShay put out his first mock draft of 2025 or 2026, I guess it would be. He had Garrett Nussmeier number 1 overall. And we were talking mostly college basketball portal. And I was like, we have to talk about this for half a second because what the hell are we talking about here? Garrett Nussmeier number 1 overall. He gets benched in this game finally. Thought it was interesting. Frank Wilson, after the game, would not commit to him as the starter. Frank Wilson's kind of in that like, yo, I ain't getting this job anyway. I got nobody to please, so I got to do what's best for the guys in this locker room, and they clearly do not trust Garrett Nussmeier. The crazy part was he got benched, and he was 18 of 21 passing in the game before getting benched. Michael Van Buren does bring a little bit with his legs, although it didn't show up there. So the interesting story to me in this game was the fact that Garrett Nussmeier got benched. But I think the other thing is, Alabama's kind of in this weird middle ground, right? Where they have those great 4 straight wins over ranked opponents. And I'm not going to do the dismissing this team because, when they beat those teams, they were all good, all undefeated, all with 1 loss, all whatever. And I'm not going to diminish it. But what I am going to say is, the back half of Missouri, you were dominating the game. You let them back in. South Carolina, you barely survive. LSU, you win, but it isn't pretty. You know, I saw Ty Simpson after the game talking a little bit about the defense carried them, which they did. But the counter to that is like, at some point, we got to acknowledge this team is not running the football well. And it's so funny. I was thinking about this. We've talked all year about how LSU can't run the ball, how Brian Kelly, the O-line whisperer at Notre Dame, was never able to put together a functional O-line at LSU. Still the case on Saturday, still couldn't run the ball. But do you know that Alabama is ranked 120th nationally in total in rush offense, 120th nationally, 14th in the SEC. Only LSU and South Carolina are worse. And I think it's safe to say, like, I know LSU has dudes on defense, but like at a certain point, you just are what the stats say you are. And Alabama, to me, is not a great running team. And I think that becomes especially interesting with Oklahoma coming in next week. And I think it's worth noting. I know everyone's going to say, oh, you know, Auburn's a lost cause, whatever. I know the Auburn defense didn't look great in game one of the DJ Durkin era, but you get them back home for the Iron Bowl that Saturday of Thanksgiving. I'm just saying is I don't think this Alabama thing is like set in stone that they're 11-1 going to Atlanta. I think they got some stuff to work on, but I think not only do they have some stuff to work on, I question if it's even fixable at this point. They got to get it figured out. They got a great run defense and a great defense specifically coming to town this weekend in Oklahoma. Like I said, survival Saturday for Indiana, Oregon, to a degree, Alabama. I think next week is starting to be separation Saturday, Texas at Georgia, Oklahoma at Alabama. Texas and Oklahoma could essentially be eliminated from the playoff race, or they could turn the SEC upside down. We will see what happens there. But that, to me, probably the biggest story of the weekend, how many close calls we got, even if nobody quite pulled off the upset. You know what game wasn't close? Texas Tech, BYU. We're going to come back, talk about the top 10 matchup in Lubbock and why it's time to show the Red Raiders some darn respect. I don't care about their NIL. We're going to talk about them. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year two is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your Big Pig Invasion tees. Again, aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Nebraska fans, new era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, if you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres Media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Chat is humming. Just a couple quick things that I see here. First of all, Abel Kane's brother says all these teams in the top 5 are good. Bama's the most battle-tested. I do agree with that sentiment. Paul Bustin Torres' chop says, Torres, what a quote. AT says Auburn's defense didn't look great. Underestimate of the year. They gave up 45 points. They stink. Well, listen, I do think it is interesting with Auburn. You know, I thought DJ Durkin would be in consideration for that job. He did say something, though, this week about how, you know, a head coach is at his best when he doesn't have to call plays as well. Maybe a sign of what was to come on Saturday. Also, if DJ Durkin isn't calling your defense and your defense isn't playing the way that it did the first 9 games of the season, I don't really know if DJ Durkin's a candidate for the head coaching job. But Abel Kane's brother does bring up a good point. Auburn played better without Freeze. LSU played better without BK. Both of those things are true. By the way, we'll get to Florida in a minute, who absolutely does not play better without Billy Napier, and that's not a compliment to Billy Napier. We will get to all of them in just a minute. Before we do, though, I do want to get to a top 10 matchup. I think you can argue maybe the most important game of the day. I thought it was the most intriguing game of the day, especially with a little hindsight, knowing that there were no crazy upsets, no Oregon losing Iowa, etc. BYU at Texas Tech. First college football playoff rankings came out this week. Both teams in the top 10. And I think, to me, a couple things. One, first of all, I thought it was a great stage for the Big 12, okay? The Big 12, listen, I think fair or not, there's this perception we have a Power 4, but it's really a Power 2, and then the Big 12 and the ACC are behind it. Well, I bring it up because, to me, ACC is a total mess. I think it's bad leadership at the top, and it trickles down to the football product. I think the Big 12 at the top of the league is very good. I actually think the middle is pretty good as well. I only bring it up to say that, in my opinion, this was just a great platform. 2 very good teams. College game day in Lubbock for the first time since 2008. That famous Graham Harrell Michael Crabtree game. Well, I'll tell you what, the days of Mike Leach putting up 50 on people at Texas Tech are over. Rest in peace, Coach Leach. But Texas Tech, the dominant 29-7 win. And I'll say this. I truly believe in my heart of hearts, it is time to put some respect on Texas Tech's name. Everybody wants to say, just BYU stinks. No, BYU doesn't stink. It's okay to acknowledge that good football is played outside the SEC, outside of the Big Ten, and it's time we talk about it. As far as this game is concerned, what stands out to me, by the way, I should mention this. When did start Torres on Texas Tech page? Because Texas Tech has some of the craziest fans in America. If you are a student that wants to start in the sports world, Twitter, email me, Aaron Torres, podcastquestions@gmail.com. We got to get a Torres on Texas Tech page going because that fan base is insane. All right, let's dive into this game. And I think the thing that stood out to me, what actually stood out? It was that Texas Tech's defense was so dominant and so good that they actually didn't appear to open things up at all offensively, right? Like, part of people were saying, Texas Tech, that offense doesn't look very good. One, BYU's defense is awesome. The run defense is awesome. BYU is physical. BYU is tough. BYU is this. BYU is that. But part of it is, if you understand football at a basic level, you know that Joey McGuire trusted that defense so inherently that he knew he didn't have to go crazy. They put up 29 points. He didn't need to put up 35, 38, 41, 45, 48, whatever it is to win the game. He knew once they got ahead, they could sit on the football, they could chew clock, they could rely on the defense. And I actually thought the play right before the half was pretty symbolic of how he felt about his team in that game. If you remember, Texas Tech was up 13-0. They're in field goal range, can easily go up 16-0, make it essentially a 2-score game, whatever, 3-score game essentially. Instead, Joey McGuire decides to go for the touchdown instead of taking the 3 points. And I thought it was crazy. But when I heard him in the halftime interview, he basically said, he's like, look, we go up 20-0 here. We feel like, or I guess it would have been 17-0. It would have been 20-0. My bad. It would have been 20-0. And he basically said, we feel like we would have been in complete control. And basically he said it without saying it. He's like, if we have a 20-point lead, BYU is not coming back on us. And to me, that's the story of this game. Listen, as soon as the game goes final, everyone's, BYU, how are they ranked in the top 10? Well, how about we just give a little bit of love to Texas Tech? Because when Alabama shuts someone down, Georgia shuts someone down, Ohio State shuts someone down, Oregon shuts someone down, the default isn't immediately, the other team was overrated. It's, maybe that other team has some really good players, and that is the case with Texas Tech. Coming into this game, and it's crazy because we know what the history of Texas Tech is with Cliff Kingsbury and Graham Harrell and Patrick Mahomes and Baker Mayfield and whoever, is that, and Baker Mayfield did play there, by the way, because I know someone in the chat's going to be like, Baker Mayfield went to Oklahoma. No, he started his career at Texas Tech. Pay attention, people. Anyway, that school that produced Patrick Mahomes and all these guys, it is the defense. It was the defense, and that defense is elite. And that defense would translate to anyone, anywhere in college football. I don't care who they play. Top 10 in scoring, top 5 in total defense, or maybe it's the other way around. Number 1 rush defense in college football. And you can absolutely see that if you did not watch the game in the box score. Okay, just a totally dominant effort. BYU held to 255 yards of total offense, 67 yards rushing on 27 carries. You can see it on the bottom of the screen there. Great job, producer Matt. This was a dominant game and a physical game, and it was unbelievable. And so as I look at Texas Tech big picture, a couple things come to mind. One, please do not tell me about NIL. I do not care, okay? Because even during the game, they were talking about it. College Game Day, they were talking about it. I guess in the ranking show, Reese Davis referenced that they've written money bags to the top 10 or something. It's like, I'm tired of hearing that, man. Because first of all, everybody's got NIL. I hate to tell you, Texas is basically spending the same as Texas Tech. Oregon is basically spending the same as Texas Tech. Ohio State spent record money a year ago to win a national championship. If it doesn't matter at Ohio State, if it doesn't matter at Texas, if it doesn't matter at Oregon, if it doesn't matter wherever, why should we care about it at Texas Tech? The other thing, and I will give credit to Chris Fowler for saying this during the game, NIL money is lovely. You still have to spend it in the right manner on the right people, right? He said something to the effect of there's a lot of talented players in the portal, but it's about fit and culture and this and that. And the guys that they have brought in have very clearly fit into that culture effortlessly, okay? So don't just tell me it's about NIL. Guess what? LSU had a ton of NIL money they spent in the offseason. How'd that work out for them? Texas A&M, many years ago, under Jimbo Fisher, plenty of NIL for that 2022 recruiting class. How did that work out for Jimbo Fisher? He's basically panhandling on the side of the street trying to get another job, and nobody wants to hire him. So don't dismiss this team, and don't dismiss them off the field, but don't dismiss them on the field either, because I'll tell you this, I think they could play with just about anybody in college football. Now, listen, you start talking about going on the road and, maybe a bad weather game in Columbus. I guess you want to play in Columbus, but, whatever. Like, listen, I don't know if they played Alabama on a neutral field tomorrow, what the score would be, or Georgia or Ole Miss or whomever. But what I am saying is when you play defense like they do, you can play with just about anybody in college football. And so I do think Texas Tech clearly now has the inside track to that college football playoff berth out of the Big 12. And I'm here to tell you, can they win the national championship? I don't know. But if they make the playoff, can they absolutely win a game or two? Could they go to Ole Miss as the 9 seed and win? Yeah, I think they could. Could they host Notre Dame and beat Notre Dame? Yeah, I think they could. And that's not a knock on Notre Dame. That's not a knock on Ole Miss, but it's time to give credit to Texas Tech. That is a darn good football team right there. Really quickly from the BYU perspective, listen, it's disappointing. I hate to say it. Kind of went the way that I don't know, I kind of thought it was going to go, is that, listen, BYU has a history of falling down early in games. They've been able to come back against Iowa State and Arizona. It's another beast doing it against this team. And I do think, you're sitting there at 8-1, 9-1. It's not reason to panic and give up on the season, but it is, as you go into your final 3 games, you got to start faster, you got to start stronger, and you got to get ahead, because playing from behind is going to catch up with you eventually. Good news for BYU. I'll say this. Everything's still in front of them. Final 3, bye week this week, or no, excuse me. They just had their second bye. TCU, at Cincinnati, UCF. Now, what's interesting about that is Cincinnati is actually tied in the loss column with BYU. So Texas Tech is 6-1. Texas Tech, of course, has the head-to-head win with BYU. BYU and Cincinnati are playing in 2 weeks from now in Cincinnati. And so that could be a de facto play-in game to the Big 12 championship game. As a matter of fact, it actually would be. If BYU beats TCU next week, then the winner of that game, I guess, they would get into the Big 12 championship game. I think Arizona State's kind of a wild card, whatever. Utah is 4-2, but they have the head-to-head loss to BYU. So for BYU, it's still in front of you. You got to get back to the Big 12 championship game. And I think you do have to win it. I don't know if BYU at 11-2, I'm not saying it's fair or not fair, but if you're 11-2 and you lose to Texas Tech twice, I think it's a tough spot to ask the committee to put you in when the best team that you played, you lost to twice. But everything's still on the table for BYU. So credit to Texas Tech. They looked the part to me. And I'll just say it. I think they're one of the top legit 6-7 teams in the country. I put them on a neutral field against Georgia. Put them on a neutral field against Ole Miss. I think they hold up just fine. I cannot wait to see what this team does. And I cannot wait to see if they can close things off, get to Arlington, and get to the college football playoff. As I said, if you are a Texas Tech student that's looking to get a start in media, feel free to email me, Aaron Torres, podcastquestions@gmail.com. All right, want to switch gears to one more football topic. Then we'll do a little hoops, actually. This is a topic. Look at Mark Stoops with the big thumbs up. I'll be real. I was planning to talk a lot of different things. If you had asked me on Friday what we were going to talk about, probably Alabama, LSU, Oregon, Iowa, maybe Auburn, Vandy, if Auburn got the win, whatever. I'm just trying to think, maybe LSU if they pulled off the upset. The one game that I did not have on the agenda for Sunday morning was Kentucky, Florida, okay? So Kentucky, we've talked about Kentucky. We've talked a lot about them. I think I've been as critical of Mark Stoops as any national media member. I think I was ahead of the Mark Stoops narrative, for up until probably the middle of October. Every other national media member is trying to tell you, he's got the best job in college football. Everybody loves him. It's like, no. Things are going sideways. Things are not good. And we spent a big chunk of September and October talking about, would he be back? Can you get out of the buyout? Who could potentially replace him? All of that. At the same time, I have to give credit where it's due. Kentucky with the absolute belt to, excuse my language if you're listening in the car with kids, BTA, belt to ass. Okay, I don't care how bad Florida is. Billy Gonzalez clearly is so far in over his head, like whatever. 38-7 final score. Kentucky has now won a second straight SEC game. Kentucky has now, by the way, gotten to 4-5. And I do wonder if Mark Stoops is slowly starting to coach himself off the hot seat and get himself at minimum another year at Kentucky. So first of all, let me say this. Let me just take a half a second, give credit to Kentucky, okay? Because I thought Kentucky had the chance to win. And I thought it would be high scoring. By the way, Torres got the over at 45.5 in this game. That was a tough pill to swallow. Kentucky wins 38-7. And Kentucky, by the way, puts up 24 points in the first half. I'm thinking we're cruising to the over. All Florida's got to do is put up like 14 points on a defense that hasn't been very good this year. Yeah, that does not happen. Part of it is a credit to Kentucky. Listen, great story, great, 2-3 week stretch here. They should have beaten Texas, if we're being perfectly honest, a few weeks ago. Part of the story is here, though, Florida. Like, listen, I'm not trying to, steal the spotlight from Kentucky. I don't know that I've ever seen a meltdown with Florida. Now, Florida, under Billy Napier, they were really poorly coached, but at least, they were in every game. Now, they couldn't get first downs. They couldn't complete forward passes, but at least, they embarrassed themselves in a different kind of way. Like losing to South Florida because you don't know how to use timeouts, that's embarrassing. Getting boat raced by Kentucky is next level stuff. We talked about Garrett Nussmeier getting benched earlier in the show. DJ Lagway getting benched in this game. It is chaos. It shows just how crazy this season has been, okay? Florida stinks. They're clearly going to have a new head coach. That's a place that, one, you better hope you get Lane Kiffin, because if you don't get Lane Kiffin, I don't even know where you go from there. But two, you got to burn it down and just build it back up from the start. It is unbelievable how far that program has fallen. And I think, by the way, we'll get back to Kentucky in a second, but even when Florida was bad under Will Muschamp and Jim McElwain, they still had 10-win seasons mixed in. McElwain made a couple SEC championship games. They never lost to Kentucky, at least not until late in the Dan Mullen era, but this is about Kentucky. And so I want to give them credit. And I want to talk Mark Stoops, because it was literally 2 weeks ago. We were talking about the Matt Jones report where he basically said at the time, Kentucky was 2-5. He went on with Andy Staples and Ari Wasserman on 3 and basically said, this is the first time that I really think that even if we have to pay the full $38 million buyout, we're going to do it, because we are not waiting for another year with the state of this program, okay? That was coming off the Tennessee loss to drop them to 2-5. Well, what has happened since? You go to Auburn, you get the win, and then you beat Florida. And I think what's kind of interesting about it is a couple things. One, the team clearly has not quit on the coach. And two, I think that what's interesting about it is you did it in different ways. In Auburn, it was this defensive slugfest, old school Kentucky kind of win, 10-3. And then you got to open it up against Florida, and you put up 38 points in the win. And so when I look at Mark Stoops, let's contextualize this a little bit, okay? And by the way, for full Kentucky coverage, follow Torres on UK. Torres on UK for all your late-breaking Kentucky news. And by the way, when I say Torres on UK, we're not covering English Premier League soccer. Okay. Anyway, I'm off the rails today. I got like 2 hours of sleep. By the way, quick side story. I actually had a dream about Mark Stoops last night. Weird. We're dog sitting. The dog was kicking me in my sleep, but I had a dream that I was in the room. Mark Stoops was negotiating a buyout, and I was in the background, and he didn't know I was there. Well, guess what? At least through today, he ain't negotiating a buyout. And so bigger picture, that is 100% true story, by the way. What was I saying? Dog sitting, Mark Stoops buyout. Okay. So at least for one more day, Mark Stoops ain't going anywhere. And I think there's now a real conversation. Okay. So first off, let's set up the context. They're 4-5 right now. Final three, Tennessee Tech at home. Obviously got to win that game. Then at Vandy, at Louisville to close the regular season. Okay. To go back to what Matt Jones said weeks ago, he said 6-6 keeps Mark Stoops keeps the job. But that was under the assumption, hey, you got to win 3 out of 4 against Auburn, Kentucky, Vandy, and Louisville. We have won 2 out of the 4 so far. So you're doing good. You're where you need to be. And I think the context of everything else matters as well. One, there's the $38 million buyout. And we know Mark Stoops isn't going to go down without swinging. Now, listen, if they get blown out in the last 2 games, I still think there's the possibility that he at least considers a renegotiation. Don't kill your legacy. If you finish 5-7, whatever, and you're clearly not the guy, maybe you reconsider. But one, there's the buyout. But two, there's a couple other variables that I think we have to think about. One, you found the quarterback. And it was funny because, the Zach Calzada stuff blew up over the last couple days. And I tweeted something about Zach Calzada, but I said the offense has taken off without him. And people were like, oh, we like Cutter Boley, but the offense has not taken off without him. It's like, yeah, the offense hasn't taken off because you were playing Texas and Auburn, 2 great defenses. Cutter Boley is clearly the guy. He is clearly the long-term answer at Kentucky. And I think if you retain Mark Stoops, it's almost certain that you keep him, right? Now, I know what people say. You never know in this era. But Cutter Boley is from the state of Kentucky. He's a redshirt freshman, and he is playing as well as any quarterback since Will Levis back in the year when Liam Cohen was calling plays. And so for me, I just sit there and say, you got the quarterback. And I know it's not perfect. And I know there's things that you aren't happy about. And I know the standard shouldn't be 5-7 or even 6-6. But if you have the quarterback in place, what is the best case scenario? You hire a different coach in hopes that he goes into the portal and finds somebody as good or retains Cutter Boley. You can retain Cutter Boley. I think the other thing we have to consider, where are you in the pecking order of this job situation, right? You look at the jobs available. If Kentucky decided to move on from Mark Stoops, they're clearly at minimum the 4th best job and maybe even the 5th best job behind Arkansas. Because when you look at Arkansas, listen, they've had a several-month head start on you. They are not committed to the big picture buyout that you are with Mark Stoops. And I think even Arkansas can offer some things from a football perspective that Kentucky can't right now. Again, you're going to spend so much money buying out Mark Stoops. I don't know what you'll be able to give the next head coach. And so when you have the quarterback, when you're winning, when you're playing well down the stretch, I mentioned it earlier, but Kentucky has not quit on Mark Stoops. And to me, that's important. I look at the rest of college football. LSU clearly quit on Brian Kelly. Florida State is in the process of quitting on Mike Norvell, and who knows, maybe we'll have to do an emergency show this evening because Mike Norvell, we don't know. Florida certainly quit on Billy Napier, but certainly has quit on this interim as well. I don't know if Auburn quit on Hugh Freeze or Hugh Freeze quit on Auburn, but somebody quit on somebody there at Auburn, okay? And I only bring it up because these guys are still playing hard for Mark Stoops. We might have doubted the message outside, I include myself, but inside that locker room, those guys are still bought in. So obviously, there's still 3 games left. We got to see what happens, right? You got to beat Tennessee Tech. That goes without saying. By the way, you want to put up another 40, 45 points, show that this offense is still humming, do that. Then I do think it largely comes down to what happens at Vandy, at Louisville. Vandy just picked up another big win on Saturday. Credit to them for beating Auburn. Vanderbilt now, 8-2, an unbelievable season for them. And I think realistically, it's fair to say that maybe you don't expect to go into that game expecting to win, but can it be close? Can it be competitive? Could you be the team that knocks Vanderbilt out of the college football playoff? And then the Louisville game speaks for itself. Louisville, of course, you don't need any motivation going into that game, but Louisville's another one. Right now they're 7-2. Final 2 games of the season are against SMU and Kentucky, and there's a chance Louisville's going to the ACC championship game and playing for a playoff berth. So you can't knock them out of the playoff the way that you potentially could with Vandy, but at the same time, you could ruin their season with another loss. So I don't want to put the cart before the horse with Kentucky, but listen, if I'm going to criticize Mark Stoops every loss since back in September, I got to go ahead and give him some credit. Back-to-back wins. And I think right now, if I was handicapping it, by the way, I put out a tweet on Saturday night. Still feels like people need to see what happens in the Vandy-Louisville game before we make any final decisions on Mark Stoops. But I do think, to me, it is an interesting scenario. Producer Matt, real quick, do we have any questions or comments? You know what? Yeah, I think there was a Mark Stoops comment that we wanted to get to. So let's talk about that one really quick. Okay. And Luke is our number 1 commenter. He just does an unbelievable job. So this is the great question. This is the great hypothetical. The argument for Kentucky to keep Stoops is, who are you going to get that's an obvious upgrade? Summerall is not going to UK. Will Stein, the offensive coordinator at Oregon, might, but he's not proven as a head coach. This is part of it, right? Is that, and here's the other thing. Who are you going to get that's an upgrade over Stoops? But then beyond that, let's say you bring him back. And let's say it doesn't work out. You're going to a 9-game SEC schedule next year. Yeah, you're probably not going to get John Summerall. He's probably going to take a job this cycle. But first of all, remember, he may be in the playoff. Teams might not be willing to wait until the middle of December to get him, the end of December. And if that's the case, maybe he is back at Tulane next year. Will Stein, who knows? But by the way, Will Stein's another one. He might be coaching into January. And so maybe those guys are available next year. But even if they're not available, we think in theory, the coaching carousel is going to be way less crazy at this time next year. I don't think there's going to be 4 SEC jobs open before November 1st, right? I think it's safe to say that's not going to happen next year. I guess it was like November 2nd when the Auburn job opened up, but you get the point. I don't think there's going to be 4 SEC jobs open up before the middle of November. And so all of a sudden, you are, to the degree that there is a pecking order, more towards the top of the pecking order. So again, we'll see what happens with Louisville and Vandy. Listen, if you lose to Vandy 31-7 and then you lose to Louisville 41-10, it's a different conversation. But can you split there? Can you keep it competitive? Could you potentially pull off an upset? All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit of college hoops. It's that time of year, a lot of crossover between the two sports. And there were really 3 results that we need to discuss. Michigan State surviving Arkansas. We know there's some Calipari conversation about his coaching. I will talk about Caleb Wilson and the North Carolina Tar Heels. And that Alabama St. John's game was unbelievable. Quick break, talk a little hoops. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, you know what we got to do. We got to thank our friends. We got to thank our partners. We got to go ahead and thank Cauley Puffs and CauleyPuffs.com. Yeah, you see the logo on the back of the screen right here. Okay, so I've told you all about Cauley Puffs, but family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, a huge sports fan. And one day he was sitting on the couch and he said, you know what? I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something my kids are going to love, something my family's going to love, something I'm going to love. And so he came up with Cauley Puffs. This is the new age health food snack. You don't need to go to the grocery aisle and buy all that crap, the Doritos, the Fritos. No, my friends, you need Cauley Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But here's the best part. They taste freaking delicious. Actually, there's another best part. In addition to tasting delicious, in addition to being healthy, they are also taking care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Okay, so check this out. All you got to do is go to CauleyPuffs.com. That's CauleyPuffs.com, CauleyPuffs.com, and you can get 15% off any purchase with the promo code Torres. That's Torres, Torres. It's that simple. 15% off any purchase. 1 bag to try them out, 100 bags to cater a party. Doesn't really matter. Promo code Torres. Collypuffs.com gets you 15% off. Collie Puffs also available on Amazon. You obviously can't get the promo code there, but Collypuffs.com, promo code Torres gets you 15% off any purchase. Thank you to our friends at Collie Puffs. All right, everybody. I am back. Good to be back. So do want to get to a couple things in the chat. I'm watching right now. First of all, Fatal Gator. We appreciate the Gators contingent coming in. Gators have given up. Ball looked like the only player on the team yesterday that even cares anymore. I'll say this. Jaden Ball, to me, he's become one of my favorite players. Runs hard, plays hard. For people who don't know, he's the Florida running back. He does play really hard. He deserves better than he's gotten. That Florida thing is so toxic. I'm with Fatal Gator. Listen, I am like the guy hanging onto the side of the window in the strong breeze on DJ Lagway. I'm trying to hold out hope. Even he looks like he's given up. Even he may need a fresh start. Like I said, you better hope you're going to get Lane Kiffin, because if not, I don't know what to do. Let's see here. Peanut Butter Posse says Cutter Boley is the best freshman QB in college football. Am I wrong? Well, technically, Julian Sayin is a redshirt freshman like Cutter Boley. So I don't think we can say that. But Cutter Boley's really good, man. He's really good. Mark Stoops in Kentucky deserves all of the accolades after that. By the way, Paul hitting on the topical conversation from late last week. Call me after LSU hires Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley said all the right things after Friday. Josh Pate put it out that he may be on the move. Lincoln Riley said, what I sacrificed to get to LA. In other words, my reputation. Everybody hates me now. I'm not going anywhere, so we will see what happens. David Floyd, I give David Floyd credit for saying what's unpopular. I know we're not supposed to give credit to Big 12 teams. He says Texas Tech is a top 3, top 4 team. Texas Tech's defense is the best in the country. Are they number 1? Are they number 2? I don't really care. There are defenses that travel and can give every team in America fits, and Texas Tech is absolutely one of them. They would give any SEC team fits. They'd give any Big 10 team fits. Credit where it's due. Texas Tech gets the win. You know who else deserves credit? Our friends, our hotel and casino partners. Yeah, I'm talking Circa Sportsbook, Circa Casino. Okay, so bottom line, I was at Circa last week. Hopefully you saw my shows live from Stadium Swim. If you're in Vegas, best place to watch any game is Stadium Swim, Circa Sportsbook, Circa Casino. It is America's biggest, the world's largest sports book. It's huge. It was really cool. Let me give a shout out to the Field of 68 guys. They had their opening day marathon on Monday. I was actually prepping for the show in the sports book, watching the Field of 68 marathon. But it's the best place to watch sports. Here is the even better part. They have opened up a brand new sports book on the Tennessee-Kentucky border, Mint Kentucky Downs, in beautiful Franklin, Kentucky. Listen, at some point, producer Matt and I are coming down to do some shows there. We may actually do the double dip. I'm thinking I may come down like late December, do a few shows, and then we'll come down for March and throw a big bash in the lead up to the NCAA tournament. But bottom line is, if you are in that Tennessee, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky area, best place to watch games. This is the closest sports book to Nashville, about 35, 40 minutes, whatever it is. How the bird flies. What do they say? How the crow flies? I don't know. The bottom line is, though, best place to watch games, all the hospitality of the beautiful Circa Sportsbook in Las Vegas, coming to the East Coast, Franklin, Kentucky, Mint Kentucky Downs. Check it out. By the way, if you do go, tag Torres at Aaron_Torres at Circa Sports. Let them know that Torres sent you. We appreciate your support, and we appreciate the support of Circa Sportsbook. All right. So it's that time of year. I do want to talk a little bit of college hoops. And I do want to start with the big game on Saturday. We previewed this game on Friday. Let me give a quick shout out to Fox. Fox, I think, has done a really good job of integrating these big college hoops games into the college football schedule. And we got one on Saturday night. By the way, next Saturday, BYU UConn, baby. That's right. Should be a top 10 matchup by the time we get there. Both those teams are 2-0. UConn put the hurting on UMass Lowell the other night. But let's go ahead and focus on Arkansas, Michigan State, Saturday night in the Breslin Center. Final score 69-66. Michigan State gets the win. I'll say this. If you thought that everybody was just going to sit back and say it's only November, nobody cares, it's not that big a deal, don't you worry about a thing. Well, all you had to do was search John Calipari on social media on Saturday. Arkansas has multiple chances to tie the game late. To say the least, the plays that he drew up were not ideal. I think some of the Cal criticism is fair. I think some of it is not. And as a matter of fact, I'll say this. I think there is one big problem that Arkansas had that nobody's talking about that they should be. I think there's a reason Arkansas fans should be mad, and it's not because of Cal's final plays. Interesting game. And it was an interesting game from this perspective, okay, is that I thought early in the game, Arkansas was dictating terms. Now, a couple of their big guys, Malik Ewan and Trevin Brazil, got in foul trouble. But what that meant, Arkansas went small, and while they were getting beat up on the boards, every time they were able to get a rebound, it was just boom, fast break, and one mixtape, Harlem Globetrotters dunk show, right? It was just, Dunk City, Billy Richmond, Darius Acuff, Malik Thomas, whatever. And they were just getting out in transition. They were up 39-36. And you kind of sat there and said, well, wait a second. They're up 39-36. Their two big guys essentially are in foul trouble. This is actually a good thing. Instead, the opposite happened. Second half comes out. Arkansas is able to go big, but Michigan State slows down the game. Michigan State dictates tempo, and Michigan State gets the win. First of all, before we get to the Arkansas stuff, let me take half a second. We have to give credit to Michigan State, right? This was a team that was not ready to go on opening night against Colgate. They did win, but it wasn't pretty. Was not impressive against UConn in an exhibition in which UConn was out, had two starters out for that game. And I thought Michigan State, listen, the game, they were able to dictate the terms of the game, and they deserve credit for that. I think most importantly, both coaches coming into this game talked about it's going to be a football game. It is going to be physical. Bring your helmet and shoulder pads. Well, if that's the case, then Michigan State won the football game. I was thinking about this. It was almost like one of those 28-24 football games where maybe Michigan State was down, 17-10 at the half, and they kind of controlled the second half. They deserve the win, the rightful win, and I do think it is going to be a win that withstands all season long. Listen, I am not someone that believes that, these games mean nothing. Now, you can argue, we're not going to talk about a season being defined or whatever based on a November game. But listen, these wins help resumes. They help seedings. And, you get this win, it's going to hold up all season long, whether it was going to be Michigan or whether it was going to be Arkansas. With that said, let's talk a little bit about Arkansas. Because in this game, I think there were reasons for frustration, but I don't think it's the reasons that people think, okay? First of all, a lot of people were saying, the freshman guards try to do too much. And to a degree, I sort of agree. I think Cal is still figuring out his rotations. Billy Richmond, in my opinion, did not play enough in the second half. Carter Knox really struggled coming off that turf toe injury. I guess Billy Richmond played 29 minutes, so I can't really say that he didn't play. Freshmen, at times try to do too much. But listen, it came down too late. And late in the game, Arkansas had several chances to tie the game, send it to overtime. And they just didn't execute. First of all, it was a 1-point game. Darius Acuff, they played 29 seconds of great defense. Darius Acuff fouls a 3-point shooter, okay? Jeremy Fears goes to the foul line. He makes 2 out of 3. So already right there, it's kind of a win. You have the knucklehead defensive play, which Darius Acuff is going to learn from. I'm not that worried about it. But then they missed the free throw to give you a chance to come back and tie it, okay? Well, you go down, you get a couple not good looks. They miss another free throw, which puts you in position to, with a couple seconds left, actually tie the game yet again. Ball underneath, weird situation. You throw it up, gets to Trevin Brazil 30 feet from the basket. He misses a 3. They end up losing the game. And so I bring it up because as soon as the game goes final, now I was under the impression, because I've been told you can't overreact to exhibitions and you can't overreact to games in November. That was not the case on social media because, listen, I think there were some Arkansas fans that were frustrated, and certainly there were some Kentucky fans saying, oh, guess what? I saw that offense my entire time watching John Calipari, blah, 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 blah. Well, listen, what I would say is this. The offense in the final minute was not good. I think part of it, by the way, was the Michigan State defense deserves a little bit of credit. They, by the way, have a Hall of Famer on their sideline. Maybe we give them a modicum of credit as well. By the way, there was the play late where Malik Thomas tried to throw the lob to Malik Ewan. Little questionable there. Malik Ewan jumps for the ball, whatever. But part of it is some of the reason that Arkansas did not get good looks is because Michigan State is coached by a Hall of Famer and he knows what he's doing as well. Okay. I'm not frustrated with the late game execution. I think it's going to get figured out. I'm not worried about the offense every year it's Cal's offense. It's and every year they figure it out by the end of the year. I think right now he's trying to fit a lot of new pieces in, whatever. The one thing that I would be frustrated though, the one thing that I do think an Arkansas fan has the right to be frustrated about was the rebounding in the interior. Everyone's focused on the guards and the shooting, and they shot 6 of 23 from 3, and what are they doing? And they can't shoot, and what about the guards? And what about Carter Knox? He didn't look good. You know what would have pissed me off if I was an Arkansas fan? You got bullied in the paint, okay? And a little bit of context matters here, but we've been talking about this Arkansas team since it came together back in April and May at the portal deadline, right? And when Arkansas went into the portal, what was the big conversation? The big conversation was you lost to Texas Tech in the Sweet 16. You had the big lead. You weren't tough enough. You weren't physical enough in the paint. And so I bring it up. The whole offseason was built on we have to get tougher and more physical in the paint. We're going to bring in Nick Pringle, 6th-year player. I think it's his 5th school, his 4th school. I know he played at Alabama. He played at South Carolina, whatever. 5th school. He's going to be a big, tough guy. Malik Ewan, he's coming from Florida State, 7-footer. He can handle, but put him in the paint. He is a big, physical, tough guy. Well, did you watch this game? Michigan State seemingly got to every loose ball, seemingly made every play, and they destroyed Arkansas on the glass. 45-33 rebounding advantage, plus 12 on the boards for Michigan State. Oh, by the way, Michigan State finishes the game with 19 offensive rebounds. And this was supposed to be the thing that got fixed over the course of the offseason. By the way, points in the paint. Take a guess. Michigan State. This was the one that jarred me when I saw it this morning. 46 of their 69 points in the paint. And so to me, everybody's talking about Arkansas's three-point shooting, too many turnovers, the guards were doing this, the late game execution. The thing that would have bothered me, you got bullied in the paint, and your whole offseason was built on making sure that never happened again. And so to me, not going to overreact, because I think Arkansas is going to be fine. They've dominated everybody else. They've done what they're supposed to do. They've looked the part everywhere else. And oh, by the way, let's give a little bit of credit to Michigan State, top 25 team on the road. By the way, unpopular opinion, let's give credit to John Calipari for scheduling a true road game at Michigan State in week 1 of the season. There's not many people doing that. Arizona, Florida play on a neutral. BYU, Villanova play on a neutral. Arkansas went to Michigan, and so they deserve some credit for doing so there as well. And so to me, I think there's a difference between being frustrated with the result and overreacting to, oh, here we go. No. If you can't tell that this team is different, way bigger, way more physical, way more athletic, way tougher, I don't know what to tell you. I think Arkansas is going to be fine. They have a nice little lull in the schedule. They don't play really a super marquee game again until Duke on Thanksgiving Day. So we're talking about, 2.5 weeks from now. It is worth noting, by the way, once they play Duke, the schedule does get much tougher because from Thanksgiving until the start of SEC play, Duke in Chicago, Louisville at home, Texas Tech in Dallas, Houston in Barclays Center. By the way, I didn't even see this. James Madison they play as well. James Madison, coached by Preston Spradlin, who is both a friend of the Aaron Torres pod and one of Cal's former managers at Kentucky. So that's pretty cool as well, Cal giving back. But I think if I was looking at this and on a scale of 1 to 10, how frustrated would I be if I was an Arkansas fan? Not very frustrated. As a matter of fact, Matt, you could pop up the John Rothstein tweet. I thought he did a good job of encapsulating that loss. This is what he said. Arkansas was out-rebounded by 12, had 14 turnovers, shot 7 of 28 from 3, had its freshmen play like freshmen down the stretch, and still had a chance to tie Michigan State on the final possession. The long-term ceiling of this team remains high in Fayetteville. Perfectly said, John. Perfectly said. We sleep in May, John, 1. But 2, I think he said it. Listen, every year we freak out about November, December losses with Cal, and every single year he has his team in position come March. I'm not going to worry about it, but I would be frustrated with the post-play. Arkansas's got some work to do. They play Duke in 2 weeks. You know who might not have some work to do? Let's go ahead and switch to the other big game of the weekend. North Carolina hosting Kansas, okay? And so we all knew the narratives coming in. First of all, and they did a good job during the game of the history of the programs. Dean Smith played for Fog Allen, blah, 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 blah. I actually hadn't really thought of it. I'm sure it's been mentioned before, but basically they said the ties between the programs were so close that was a big reason that they didn't want to play each other for years. It just felt like there was too much, love and respect between both sides, and you didn't want to see the other side lose, whatever. But last year, early in the year, Kansas gets the win over North Carolina. This year, we know what the narratives were. Bill Self, how is he going to bounce back with Darren Peterson? And then Hubert Davis on the hot seat. Well, at least for one night, Hubert Davis looked like a darn good coach. North Carolina at home, not only pulls away late, but dominates late. Final score 87-74. And listen, I don't think this was a Kansas stinks thing. I think it is North Carolina just might be better than we realized. We got to give them credit. You don't want to overreact to one result, but you don't want to not react at all. But let's also call a spade a spade. North Carolina deserves credit. They pulled away late. But my goodness, we got to talk about somebody right now. Caleb Wilson. Any of you watch the MLB postseason with Big Papi and Derek Jeter and David Ortiz's Big Papi and Derek Jeter and Alex Rodriguez? Remember when they would bring somebody to the desk and David Ortiz would say, my dog, and then he'd hand out a T-shirt and everybody would give up debt? Caleb Wilson, you are my dog because, listen, I will say this. I knew Caleb Wilson was good, okay? We talked about him throughout the recruiting process. By the way, I think it's Terrence. I want to shout out Terrence. I believe your name is Terrence. We have a UNC fan. Anytime we talk about UNC, immediately gets into the comment section. And I will give Terrence credit because he said from the beginning, he said, y'all are hyping up Cam Boozer and all these guys. He said, Caleb Wilson is as good as any of them. And I think he's right, at least so far early in the season. In this game, listen, a lot of people contribute when you have the 87-74 win. But early on in the game, when it was back and forth and pretty even, Caleb Wilson was dominant. Now, again, in the second half, other guys stepped up, Seth Trimble, Luka Bogovic, etc. But to me, this was the Caleb Wilson national coming out party, okay? 22 points in this game. 10 rebounds. I believe Jay Billis said his goal for every game this year was to get 22 and 10. Well, he didn't quite get there. I think I said 10 rebounds. But he finished, I'm screwing up the stats here. 24 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, and 4 steals. Let me back up. I said 22 and 10. It was 24, 7, 4, and 4. Okay. But he was the best player on the floor. And he is an absolute dog, okay? And a couple of things on him. One, I have heard so many guys coming out of high school talk about, I got that killer mentality and I got that Mamba mentality and I'm one of one and I'm one of them ones and whatever. Caleb Wilson really might be that guy. So I want to play some sound from after the game. So he was talked about kind of that Michael Jordan, and that's when I took it personal, all of that. Well, listen to Caleb Wilson talking to how he got ready for the North Carolina game. Play the first piece of sound, Matt. That was Caleb Wilson, not Caleb Williams, Caleb Wilson in the postgame after North Carolina.
I think it sets a aggressive tone like we're here. Like, me personally, I feel like I've been disrespected in polls and things like that. People telling me I'm not a top 3 freshman in the ACC, so I'm just going to keep going out here and killing people. I got a list on my phone, and it's nowhere near done, so it's just going to keep happening.
How many people on the list or things on the list?
It's a list every game. People think I joke when I say I put stuff in my wallpaper for my phone, but I put stuff on my wallpaper before I play to make sure I'm pissed.
What was on your wallpaper today?
My wallpaper today was my feeling after the McDonald's All-American game when I didn't touch the ball. So, and Darren Peterson was on my team. So that was my wallpaper.
So this was real personal.
Yeah.
Caleb Wilson, my wallpaper. And listen, like I said, I think there's a lot of these guys. And listen, I've covered high school recruiting and recruiting forever. All these kids, I'm different. I'm built different. I got that Mamba mentality. That to me sounds like some Mamba mentality. And it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to back it up. Yeah, Darren Peterson didn't pass me the ball in the McDonald's All-American game. I've been holding on to that one since back in March, okay? So I love the attitude. By the way, we can play one more piece of sound on Caleb Wilson. He did join the Field of 68 after the game and had a very funny comment about what he still has to prove as a freshman in college basketball.
Haven't you shown yet, Caleb? What haven't you shown that you want to show people that you can do?
I haven't shown people I'm the number 1 pick yet, so that's all I want to say. That's all I'm worried about.
Hey, man.
My guy Rob Dowster loved that comment there. But listen, bottom line, I love everything about him, and I've had this thought. Okay, so it's early in the season, but one, it's going to be a conversation. I think everything that everyone has said about this high school class is 100% accurate. This is going to go down as maybe the best high school recruiting class ever. The one that's kind of the gold standard, 2000, I believe it was 7. So it would have been the 2007, 2008 college basketball season. That was Kevin Love, Derrick Rose, James Harden, Blake Griffin. It was a loaded class. I think that this class is shaping up to be that and maybe even better, right? And I think the first week has proven it. Koa Pete, we know what he did in Vegas. AJ DeBonsa has been awesome. Mikel Brown Jr. outside of the Kansas game has been awesome. By the way, Darren Peterson was good in this game as well. But I had this thought, is that Caleb Wilson has now played head-to-head against the two guys that everybody believes, right? It's a big three of DeBonsa, Peterson, and also Cam Boozer. Well, I'll say this. North Carolina played BYU in an exhibition, okay? This is not a knock on AJ. We know I love AJ. We know I love BYU. I think AJ's a great player, a great prospect, a great teammate. Caleb Wilson outplayed AJ DeBonsa in that game. Now, BYU got the win, and AJ DeBonsa played well, but Caleb Wilson was the better player on the floor that night. He was the best freshman on the floor. And again, that's not a knock on AJ DeBonsa. More points, better shooting percentage, more rebounds, and frankly, transparently, probably with less help around him. Friday night, he was the better player than Darren Peterson. Now, Darren Peterson, again, on the road, doesn't have help, in foul trouble. This is not a knock on Darren Peterson. But what it is the reality check that we have to acknowledge that he has played AJ DeBonsa head-to-head. He was the better player. He has played Darren Peterson head-to-head. He was the better player. Not saying Darren Peterson's a bad player. Not saying AJ DeBonsa is not a great player. And what I'm also not saying, one thing I will never do on this show, I'm never going to talk about these guys in terms of, an NBA, where are they going to be as an NBA draft prospect in 8 years? I don't care. That's not what this show is about. I'm not here to rank players. Koa Pete, I don't know how he's going to be as an NBA player. I know he bullied the crap out of the Florida State front line the other day. And I know that Caleb Wilson bullied Kansas to a degree. Want to give them credit and also want to give a little bit of credit to North Carolina as well. I think like a lot of other people, have been critical of Hubert Davis. The one thing I'll give Carolina fans credit for, they said, wait until this roster comes together before you criticize. And now you can see it, man. They're so much bigger than they were. Henry Visar had a very good game in this game, finished with 20 points. Jaron Stevenson's always been my guy. I think he plays a role. Seth Trimble was very good. And Luka Bogovic off the bench had a couple nice plays as well. Credit to North Carolina. This isn't only about Caleb Wilson. Hubert Davis deserves credit. Some great second half adjustments. 58 points in the second half. Carolina gets the win. Really quickly, let's just spend half a second talking about the Alabama St. John's game. First of all, I credited Fox for putting the Michigan State St. John's game or Michigan State Arkansas game on in primetime. Having this game on at noon Eastern, tough. Like, again, we couldn't have put this game on Thursday night. We couldn't have put this game on Friday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Tuesday night, Saturday at noon. And it's a shame because people missed what I think was actually probably the best game of the college basketball season so far. Alabama wins 103-96. Okay, we're not going to spend too much time on this one. My biggest takeaway, Nate Oates. I mean, listen, it's hard to say anybody is better than Dan Hurley as a college basketball head coach. Dan Hurley, 2 national championships in 3 years, pushed Florida to the wire last year with kind of a banged up team. Nate Oates is right there, though, man. I mean, Nate Oates, what we have to remember, they lost a lot off last year's team. 4 of the 5 starters in their Elite 8 run last year, gone. 7 of their top 10 scorers, gone. By the way, of the 3 top returning scorers, one of them was Latrell Wrightsell, who only played in like 3 or 4 games all of last year. So they basically returned nothing. Transparently, I'll just say it. They don't have the NIL funding of a lot of other teams, not just in the SEC, but nationally. It was kind of well known that, like, yeah, Kentucky can spend whatever they want. Arkansas largely spent what they want on a national scale. Texas Tech, BYU, Michigan, Illinois, whoever. St. John's was one. Alabama didn't have that. Like, I'll just give you a quick side story. Alabama wanted to keep Mo Diabate. Mo Diabate is like, I can get more money in the portal. And he decided to leave. And that's his prerogative. That's not a criticism. It's just a reality. So I bring it up because Alabama is not one of the most well-funded NIL situations in the SEC. They lost a lot. And, oh, by the way, they're coming off the best 2-year run in program history. Final Four 2 years ago, Elite 8 last year. And they go to Madison Square Garden, and they largely dominated St. John's in this game, 103-96 in this game. Really quickly, as far as, like, takeaways, LeBaron Philon's that dude, man. And, you know, let's give credit to Luke in the chat. I don't know if Luke's still around or if he's called it a day. But I just bring it up because Luke was like, I like Alabama. And I probably didn't give enough credit to LeBaron Philon coming back. LeBaron Philon was awesome last year as a freshman. Don't think he got the credit he deserves. Well, so far, so good this season. He's averaging 23.5 points, 5.5 rebounds so far this season. And, oh, by the way, in that game on Saturday, 25 points in that game. And, you know, Pitino actually had a funny quote after the game. He basically said, you know, that's one of the most athletic backcourts that I have seen in my recent memory. And he's like, I'm not even going to say anything about our lateral quickness. If you remember 2 seasons ago when Pitino and St. John's were struggling, he said, this is the softest, weakest, we don't have lateral quickness. And he basically just crushed his whole team. He's like, I'm not going to blame our lateral quickness. Those guards are just that good. So LeBaron Philon with 25, Aiden Holloway, who started his career at Auburn, 21 points. And Taylor Bull Bowen. I mean, that's kind of that money ball approach in the portal. You lose Mo Diabate, you replace him with Taylor Bull Bowen, who was at Florida State, left after the coaching change. He looked really good as well. So could go on about Alabama, St. John's, but I think both teams are very good. St. John's fans, stay tuned. We might have something for you when you guys get to Vegas in a couple weeks. But, yeah, credit where it's due. Alabama gets the win. And Alabama, by the way, if you have not seen their schedule, Nate Oates does not duck the smoke, okay? They are hosting Purdue later this week. Then they play Illinois and Chicago. Then they go out to Vegas for that for the Players Era Tournament. They will play the first day, November 24th, against Gonzaga in Vegas. By the way, Gonzaga got a nice win against Oklahoma on Saturday night as well. Oklahoma, ironically, led by Darion Reed, former Alabama Crimson Tide basketball player. All right, I'll tell you what. I think we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Matt, any last really good questions? You know, we're an hour and a half into this puppy. I think we're going to get out of here. No. Never underestimate Izzo, says Benjamin Bush. So we're back to the college hoops. Listen, you can criticize the final couple plays for Arkansas. At some point, you have to acknowledge they were playing a team with a Hall of Fame head coach at home. And so, you know, everybody wants perfection. You know, let's give it a week. Everybody's going to take some losses, right? St. John's took a loss on Saturday. You know, Kentucky and Louisville are playing this week. Alabama and Purdue. Somebody's going to lose the Alabama-Purdue game. Doesn't mean that their season's over. And I don't think Arkansas' season is over because they lost to a Hall of Fame coach on the road by 3 points. 1 or 2 more, we'll get out of here. Eddie Congress. Can anyone explain Kenny Payne being paid $1 million to sit on the bench, rarely interact, look disinterested? Must be a hell of a practice coach because he does zero coaching during games. I was actually thinking a little bit about Kenny Payne. I think he has done a good job of developing big men. I think some of the loss on Saturday falls on him. His big men were not ready to play in that game. Good comment by Eddie, who still has the emoji of Torres scratching his nose. All right, I'll tell you what. Unless we got anything great, Matt, I think I'm going to go ahead and get out of here for the afternoon. Football's about to start. Like I said, we're dog sitting. The dogs need to get watched, get walked. By the way, Paul was something funny. 12:30 on a Sunday, no coaches fired. Let's go, coaches. We need a story. I'll tell you this. This is maybe the theme of the weekend. And I said this on my Fox Sports radio show. All the coaching carousel stuff is crazy in the moment. And then when the dust settles, you realize there's nothing to really talk about, right? Like LSU, Alabama, and Penn State, Indiana should have been two of the biggest games on the schedule this week. And it was kind of just like, whatever, Florida's quit. And I don't want to dismiss what Kentucky did, but Florida's quit, whatever. And it's like, some of the best Sunday shows we've done was when we were criticizing Brian Kelly before Brian Kelly got fired, criticizing Billy Napier before Billy Napier got fired. So anyway, as Paul says, we'll see if another coach gets fired. I could actually go for a Sunday where I don't have to start recording again. I mean, I go back to week 3 when I had to start with UCLA and Deshaun Foster, and it really hasn't slowed down from there. All right, I'll tell you what. I think I'm going to get out of here on the chance that somebody does get fired. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. If you're not subscribed to the Aaron Torres pod, do me a favor. Make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. 65,000 subscribers. We very much appreciate your support. And oh, by the way, we also appreciate everybody tuning in here on a Sunday morning. We're rocking and rolling, no slowing down as we hit the middle of November. Thank you to everybody for listening. Thank you to Cauley Puffs. Remember, 15% off any purchase, CauleyPuffs.com. Thank you to SeatGeek, $20 off your first purchase, any ticket, any show if it's on SeatGeek. And thank you to Circa. Shout out to Torrent. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Redick, you F-head. Unblock me. We'll be back. We will do a Louisville, Kentucky preview on Monday, and then normal